guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am excited to actually be outside and have nice weather to do this for you guys. I've been working all day. I look like a mess, but we're going to do this. We're going to start the process at least today. Today I'm going to be bringing you guys through turning this $50 desk that I found on Facebook Marketplace and turning it into like just the perfect adorable little desk. Bugs are all over me. So if some of you guys are new here, I am moving up to college this coming fall, and I do need a little desk, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money on it, obviously, because I'm only going to be there for 2-3-ish years to finish my degree and everything like that. So Facebook Marketplace was where I found this desk. It's pretty basic, and honestly, we could probably keep it this way, but I have the supplies and stuff, and I feel like I could make it look 10 times better for not much more money. That's what we're going to do today. Specifically, it is laminate, so it's like wood, but it has like a plastic coating on it. So if you're interested in how to refinish that without sanding, that's a big B. I don't like B's. What was I saying? So if you're interested in like refinishing laminate without having to sand or anything like that, make sure you keep watching. There's also some parts of it that are metal, so we're also going to talk about how to prep your surface and everything like that. But yeah, so if you are new, make sure you subscribe for new lifestyle, home, and DIY videos every single week, just like this one. I do lots of things like this and also day in the life videos. And yeah, I really just like to hang out with you guys and bring you guys along on what I'm doing all the time. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's talk prep work, which is honestly the most annoying and also very necessary part of this process. I don't know what I'm saying. Needless to say, this isn't the fun part, but it is 100% necessary to prep your workspace. This has been sitting in our garage for 3 weeks, maybe even a month. We need to get all that dust off. So basically the first thing that I'm going to do is just take a really wet cloth, and I'm just going to clean this thing up, let it dry for a few minutes, and then we can start priming. I just want to make sure that the surface is nice and clean, and we're going to get as smooth of a surface as possible when we put on the primer. So that's going to be our first step, and then we'll talk a little bit more about primer and stuff like that. And it's really important at this stage that you go through with your wet cloth or your wet rag and get all of those little crevices, because we really don't want those in our paint and our primer. And I'm also taking this opportunity to take off the hardware. That also depends on your style, your preference, what you want to do with something, but I will be showing you guys some hardware that I'll have linked down below later in the video, and I just think it gives it a nice look and makes it a little bit more my style. So while that is drying, let's talk primer. This is something that I have learned just recently. I don't really use primer very often, but since this is a laminate material, like I said, it's basically wood, but it's like coated in plastic. So like you could sand it down, but I don't know if you guys saw me transform a cabinet. It was like a $1,700 cabinet that I made for less than 500 bucks, which I'll have linked down below. There was a part in that video where I was like, this isn't real wood, it was laminate. So when I sanded it, it scratched it. So you could do that. You could sand it down a little bit and you could paint it and everything would be fine for the most part. But if you did do that, I would suggest one of those, like, I don't know if motorized is the right word for it, but I wouldn't recommend taking a piece of sandpaper and like manually doing it, is what I'm saying. This is the primer that I got. I will have this linked below. This is on Amazon. It's like 30 bucks. So it's actually pretty affordable for the most part. This is a shellac-based primer. I learned that this is very important. A water-based primer is not going to be good. It's going to basically scrape off of your surface, and that's not what we want. And it's also recommended that we do 2 coats of this, so if we are able to, we're definitely going to do that. But yeah, if you are refinishing laminate that has like holes or anything like that, now is the time where you're going to fill that in. I believe that's going to be like a joint compound or wood filler, depending on obviously the project that you're doing. But yeah, so if you are planning on filling in any holes or scratches or anything, do that and then do the primer and make sure that's like all dry and set and everything like that. We're gonna pop this open and we're going to put it in a little tray. I couldn't find a mini roller, so we just have a regular roller. I'm sure it'll be fine. And we're going to put the first coat of this on as much of the desk as we possibly can. So not to confuse anybody or jump too far ahead of myself, but I am gonna learn an important lesson later on in this video. I actually do suggest taking a very fine sandpaper and going over the laminate and also the metal just to roughen it up a little bit. You will see later in this video that my primer does not like to stick to it very well when I go at it with basically a utility knife, which I don't plan on doing that in the future, but essentially my dad gave me a tip and you'll see later in the video, just stay tuned. But before you do this step, I would roughen it up a little bit with some sandpaper, then clean it off, and then go in with your primer. It's recommended that you do a couple coats of primer, but of course, one should be enough if you make sure that it's super generous and you get all the nooks and crannies, and you also need to do your best to avoid dripping and anything like that. So I would also recommend going in with a brush so that you don't get little fuzzies all over, which again, I will explain later in this video. We learned a lot in this video, so make sure you watch all the way through. So the sun has officially almost set, but we did get our first layer of primer on here. One thing I did learn from this process is not to use a big fluffy roller. I do have a few little fuzzies all over the desk, but it feels completely smooth, so I'm hoping that once we get on another coat of primer and we get on the actual paint that it's gonna be perfectly fine. But it feels really smooth. It's already dry. But yeah, so I did the actual body of it, and then I also did the 2 drawers that are going to go inside of it. And yeah, so we're gonna let these sit overnight. We're gonna do another coat of primer just because I have so much of it left, just to make sure that everything is going to be nice and sealed, and it's gonna be just a really nice base for our paint. But yeah, I'm gonna shut everything down in here, and we're gonna let this dry overnight, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the second coat of primer. Hello guys, and welcome to day 2 of getting this desk transformed. So the primer is completely dry, which is why you're sitting on it currently, but we still have a few of the little like fuzzies and bumps from the roller, which I'm a little bit upset about. I really didn't think about that, so learn from my mistakes. But yeah, we're gonna work with it. I still think it's definitely usable, and I think once we get another coat of primer on there, we get a couple coats of paint and everything, I really think it's gonna smooth itself out and it's gonna look really nice. And we're going to let it dry overnight, and then tomorrow, after I get home from work, we're going to do the actual paint color. So we're going to take advantage of this nice weather, have the door open, and just like get this project rolling, you know? Let's do it. And again, with learning as we go, I should have done this at the very beginning, is put a little bit of tape, like painter's tape or masking tape, behind the holes where the hardware used to be. That way when I'm painting the face of the drawers, I'm not getting any primer or paint dripping down in the drawer. Of course you can like paint the drawer and everything, but I decided just to do the front of it and the sides, and I think it looks perfectly fine that way. And it's just a really good tip to keep it nice and clean. And like I said, we're just gonna go in with another coat of primer, make sure it's on there really smooth. There's no little clumps of paint or anything like that, so just take your time. And another thing I'd like to mention is this primer is very sticky. I would use an old paintbrush or a very cheap paintbrush to apply it. I ended up having to throw mine away because it was stiff, like there was no way to get the primer out. And if you are a painter or anything like that and you know how to get that out of a paintbrush, please let me know in the comments, because like I said, learning is the theme of this video, so I'd love to know. guys, welcome to day 3 of this project. So today we're going to be working on the desk a bit more. I believe we have to do a couple different things. So first of all, I found out that you actually can sand primer once it's dry. So once you let it sit overnight or for several hours, you can go ahead and sand it so we can maybe get those little fuzzies from the roller off. And then my dad was talking about there's like an adhesion test that you can do with tape and like a utility knife. So I'm gonna try that and I'll try to walk you guys through it just to sort of make sure that the primer is nice and adhered to the metal and the laminate. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna start with the lamination thing to make sure that we have a really good base, and then hopefully we can proceed forward with sanding the top and getting it nice and smooth. So let's get started. I'm gonna set you guys up on my tripod and we're gonna get to it. All right, so I got my tape, and I'm pretty sure you can use some sort of like masking tape, painter's tape. I don't think it really matters. Then a utility knife. These are super sharp, so be careful. So I'm just gonna choose a spot that isn't going to be showing to test this, because we're gonna be making a bunch of little scratches. So we're gonna do this on a back portion. So I'm just gonna move this around a little bit. Okay, so here's the little section I'm going to try it on. So essentially we need to make a bunch of cross hatching sort of lines that are going to be super close together. So we're going to do a bunch vertical and a bunch horizontal, and then we're going to stick a little piece of our tape on there, really firmly press it on there super hard, let it sit there for a few minutes, and then pull it off. If it comes off clean, then we're good to go. So hopefully this doesn't tear off a bunch of this, but I chose obviously the back of it and also the part that has a little bit of these little fuzzies on it. So if it does mess it up, not a big deal. Well, all right, update. So that was not supposed to happen, but I didn't do the back super thoroughly, I'm realizing. So that's probably why it's not adhering super well, but I did take this utility knife and it's like super heavy and clunky. It's got all sort of like sharp edges and everything, and I dragged it across the top here just like this, and nothing is coming off essentially. So I'm not too worried about this. Oh, and another thing to keep in mind, for the top of the desk I did 3 layers. So that's one thing you could do to ensure that it's going to be super resistant to that. I am going to try to test the metal in the same way that I tested the top, just by kind of running this along it, and we should be good to go. But I am glad that I did this on the back. So we're just going to, I'll probably put a light layer of primer over it because it does dry pretty quickly, because I don't want nothing to be on there, but I think it'll work. I think it'll be okay. So I don't know if this hack works, but I mean, we try. Let's get our sandpaper, sand down the top, and then I'll apply a little bit of primer to this little spot. As I said, I'm going to go over it with a little bit of primer just to make sure that there is something holding the paint to the desk. And about the sanding technique, I should have shown a close-up because it was so satisfying to see all the little lumps just like magically go away. So if you run into this issue with your project, use a little bit of fine sandpaper and it works like a charm. Okay, so after doing a bit more research, I have some updates for you and a different plan of attack. So if you are doing something like this and you have something that's metal or laminate, I would sand in between primer coats. So like do your first one, let it dry, lightly sand it, wipe it off, go in with your second coat of primer, sand that just a little bit with a very fine grit. I'm using like 150. And then after you sand your final coat of primer, put your paint on, and then you're supposed to sand in between painting coats. I was not informed of that in the video that I watched. She said if it's laminate, you don't need to sand it down, but it does make sense because you need to make a little bit of, you need to make like some holes, so so to speak, in your laminate. So like the paint has something to adhere to, if that makes sense. So I apologize for acting like I knew what I was talking about, because apparently I didn't. But yeah, that's the new plan of attack. I gave everything a very light sanding. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do another coat of primer. I don't think I will. And I think I'm just gonna go in with paint and do a couple coats, sanding in between. So if something does go wrong, I do have more primer. I can always sand it down and redo it. So I'm not too worried, but we're learning a lot today. Call me basic, but the color that I went for with this desk, or that I decided on, was white. First of all, I knew that we had to have white paint in our house somewhere. I wasn't about to buy any paint. And the room that I'm going to be staying in, I think is like 10 by 9-ish feet. So it's a pretty small room. If you have a small space, bright white is really gonna make it feel bigger, obviously along with mirrors and stuff, but I thought a bright white color would just look super nice and just make the room feel light and airy. I thought that the dark color beforehand was just going to make it feel super small and cluttered, and I just think it's gonna look really nice. And speaking of my room and makeover, make sure you stay tuned to the next few months. Make sure that you subscribe so that you see that room makeover. I have so many plans. I am very excited, and as you are seeing here, in between coats of paint, I am doing a very rough light sand in between each coat of paint. After it has completely dried for a few hours, I did 3 coats. I just didn't film the last one because, of course, it's a little redundant at that point. And then I let it dry overnight, and we finished it off the next morning. Good morning, guys. Welcome to day 3 and the final day, hi puppy, of this little makeover. I'm feeling a lot better about this. As you guys saw earlier in the video, the tape thing, the tape thing that I tried didn't quite go as planned, so I got a little bit worried about it. I did quite a bit more research. There's cats and dogs everywhere. I did quite a bit more research. I actually saw someone use the same exact primer, and they used a similar paint, like a house paint and stuff. Excuse me, puppy. Show everybody your face. Say, I'm a cute puppy, but I'm naughty. Anyway, and it worked out perfectly for her. I was talking to my dad about it, and he was like, well, now, Penny, he was like, well, now might not be a good time to mention that I've never redone furniture before. I think it's gonna be good. I did 2 to 3 coats of primer on the whole entire thing, and it actually has a really, really smooth finish. Even if you have something that's actually made out of wood, I think primer is a really good idea because it just smooths everything out, makes it a lot easier to clean. So yeah, I let it dry completely overnight, and I think we're ready to put on hardware and finish this up. Of course, like I said, I do think this is gonna work out, but I will keep you guys posted on like Instagram and, sorry, Ron just like bit my bracelet, on like Instagram and in vlogs and stuff on here, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to see how it's all gonna turn out. But I want to show you guys this hardware. I want to show you guys this hardware that I actually got from Amazon. Here's what it is. So given that this is a very plain desk, I wanted to go with something a little bit more unique, and I love brass hardware. Bless you, puppy. And hardware, I feel like, is such an inexpensive fix that you can do for any project just to elevate it and make it more your style. And this is what it looks like. Let me see if I can get it to focus here. Tell me that is not gorgeous. It is so pretty. I love it. It's like a little hexagon, and it's very like almost rustic, but it's very modernized and just super classy and adorable. And I really think it's just gonna elevate this and give it some more character. So yeah, so I believe that's all we have to do today, and I'll show you guys the final reveal, the before and afters of it all. And yeah, I'm super excited to put this together, and I think it's gonna make such a great statement in my room, and it's just gonna be so functional and beautiful. So let's finish this off and wrap up this project. As I said, I will have these brass hardware pulls linked down below. They are a little bit more on the expensive side, bed, but I really wanted to get something that was going to be good quality because I got them through Amazon, and that's usually the way to go for that stuff. But this is, again, a super easy fix, and I just thought that it was such a big difference, even though it was such a small thing. So I highly recommend that, and I think it just gave it a completely different feel. And switching out hardware is super easy. Anybody can do it. All you need is a little screwdriver, and you take out the old hardware and you put in the new. So it's super easy, and you just do it once that paint is dry. Now we're putting the drawers in, and now let's take a look at the before and after. Alright guys, that's going to be the end of today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. You learned a few things. It was a little bit of a roller coaster in terms of confidence, but I think we were left with a really, really nice desk, and I think it's going to be so beautiful in my little space. It's going to brighten it up and bring in a little bit of character as well, so I think it's going to be really fun. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for new DIY lifestyle and home videos every single week, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, that's the end of today's video. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day so far, doing whatever you're doing, and I cannot wait to see you super soon. Ronnie, can you say bye? Bye guys.